It is time for Stardom Sit-em with Michael F. Florio. Go to NFL.com/startsit to see the full list. We will give you some, also free of charge, right here, starting with the running backs. Who is our first start of the 2025 season?
Call him Thanos. He's inevitable. TreVeyon Henderson, no matter what. Yeah, I've been saying all summer to draft him. There's no way I'm telling you to sit him in week one. And look, a lot of this is just about believing in the talent. I think that he is a home run hitter, so even if he has limited touches, if he's splitting carries with Ramondre Stevenson or something like that, I think he could come through. I think he's going to get involved in the passing game. The Raiders, middle of the pack against running backs last year, and this shouldn't be a game where the Patriots are super far behind and have to abandon the run. So I really like TreVeyon Henderson. You drafted him early. You drafted him to be a starter. Start him. And then my other guy, Isaiah Pacheco. Maybe this is just me trying to get the guys in that I loved all summer, but Pacheco was off to a great start last year before he got hurt, and he has looked like himself once again in the preseason. This is a guy who could be playing a three-down role in a Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes offense. I shouldn't have to say anything more than that, but early on you want to go with talented players that you know have a clear-cut role in an offense and a good offense at that. Plus, last year in Brazil, a lot of points were scored, so I like getting the Chiefs in.
Yeah, dealing with the injury, of course, the offense slowed down. It was a fall off for Isaiah Pacheco. A bounce back will be nice. So those guys in the lineups, who we pulling out?
The artist simply known as Bill. Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. Look, I have high hopes for him. I spent $60 of my fab in a league to get him yesterday, but that doesn't mean I want to start him week one. The hope is that he will be the lead back for the Commanders. I need to see that first, though. I'm not even worried about him being fourth on their week one depth chart. What I am worried about is Austin Eckler's probably going to have passing downs. We're hearing Chris Rodriguez might be the short yard back. Debo's going to get some involvement there. Jaden's going to run plenty. And the Giants' D-line scares me, so I really need to see it first before I roll someone like Bill into my starting lineup.
Yeah, even though the team felt good enough about Bill to trade Brian Robinson, we're going to have to see before we make that start investment. So let's go over to wide receiver. Which ones are we supporting this week?
What I believe is the best rookie wide receiver in this year. We're going with Travis Hunter here. My offensive and defensive rookie of the year picks. And the Jags, look, they've been saying since they drafted him that he is a full-time offensive player on their early depth chart. He is a starting wide receiver and a backup cornerback. And that is how I expect him to be used. But Brian Thomas Jr. is going to get number one corners all year. So Travis Hunter is going to get number twos, and more than that, he is going to be in the slot for Liam Cohen, which is a role that has created huge fantasy seasons last year. Chris Godwin, Cooper Kupp in the past. I think Travis Hunter could flirt with wide receiver one value, and my bold prediction this week, 100 yards and a touchdown for the Heisman winner.
Wow.
And then I said I like starting Chiefs this week. I'm starting Xavier Worthy, who with Rashee Rice sideline is going to be the wide receiver one and likely top target for Patrick Mahomes. And we saw Worthy really come on down the stretch in the regular season, in the playoffs, and he had one of the greatest stat lines in Super Bowl history. And he has a history of success against the Chargers. Last season, 16 and 10 fantasy points, and the 10 came when they were still kind of easing him in. So again, in Brazil, where a lot of points could be had, I like me some Chiefs and Xavier Worthy on Friday. You're going to be watching Friday night. Why not put him in your lineup?
Yeah, folks feeling good about making relatively light investments in both of those guys and getting returns out of. Who do you think they won't be getting many returns out of this week?
Chris Olave. Look, it's not you, it's your quarterback. I just don't trust Spencer Rattler because of what I saw last season. He played in 7 games. In 4 of those games, the Saints scored 10 points or fewer. So don't expect a lot of scoring opportunities there for Chris Olave. Spencer Rattler did not air the ball out much. He turned it over and took sacks at a very high rate. So you're really banking on catches, kind of racking it up for PPR points, and that's not the way I want to live in week one when no teams are on bye and we already know the guys that are injured. So you have everyone available to you. I would try to get away from Chris Olave, of course, unless you're in a deep league like me and you took him thinking like, oh, this is a good value, and now you hate it looking back at it.
Yeah, it's a long season. Things could change, but as of right now, we got Chris Olave on the bench. Those are the starts and sits. We'll get to the quarterbacks and tight ends in just a moment, but let's dial up the heat and get some sleeper hot sauce with Adam Rank.
All right, thank you so much, Patrick. Time to add a little bit of spice here, and I'm going to start at the wide receiver position, and I know the last time that I was in Ybor City, Somebody tried to pass off this mild sauce to me and said, don't worry about it, it's mild, and it nearly burned my face off. And that's what I feel about Emeka Egbuka this season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A true value for anybody who drafted him early in July. And now as we sit here in September, he's going to be a wide receiver too for this prolific Buccaneers offense that is going to be directed by Baker Mayfield. And the matchup is great. When you look at the Atlanta Falcons, they allowed the most fantasy points per game to wide receivers in 2024. They allowed the most receiving touchdowns to wide receivers in 2024. And I know that last year is last year and this year is this year, but the matchup is still great for Emeka Egbuka. Even though you already know about this, I'm not telling you any secrets. The secret is already out. So let's roll on to a 3-alarm variety. I'm going to go to the running back position, and I'm going to be talking about Tony Pollard, he had 9 top 25 fantasy finishes in 2024. When he's given an opportunity, he goes out and makes the most of it. The only thing that makes this spicy, that makes this 3-alarm, is that he's going up against one of the best defenses in the NFL. He's going up against the Denver Broncos, who allowed a lack of production to a lot of players last season. However, if there was one little weak spot, they allowed the second most receiving touchdowns to running backs in 2024. I'm looking for hope because I painted myself into a corner. I started popping off, and now I got to start Tony Pollard against the Broncos, which I don't want to do. I'm searching for grains of hope. And speaking of which, let's go El Diablo. El Diablo, and I'm going to be talking about Ollie Gordon against the Indianapolis Colts. A great matchup this week. All the intrigue, all the drama in Miami. Oh, Tyreek Hill is not a star, is not a captain anymore. So many things going on, so many injuries. However, I do look at this Miami Dolphins offense. I do believe that Ollie Gordon is going to get a handsome opportunity this week going up against the Colts. The Colts are, to me, are one of those struggling teams in transition. They don't know who they are. They're trying to figure it out. Oh, they've also got Danny Dimes, which means there's going to be a lot of offensive opportunities for the Miami Dolphins. And they love to hit their running backs out of the backfield as receivers. This one, to me, is a great matchup. The Colts allowed the second most rushing yards to running backs in 2024. The seventh most rushing yards per game. Listen, it's time to go. It's time to go all in on Ollie Gordon. And also, it's time to go all in on this Friday night game down in Brazil. Ladd McConkey is one of the most celebrated players in all of fantasy football. But is he going to go out there? Is he going to get 10 receptions? Is he going to get 5 receptions? What is he going to be doing against that Kansas City Chiefs defense? I am going to tell you that coming up next. NFL Fantasy
Starts and sits with Michael F. Florio. And as noted by the Drake May highlight tape, we are discussing the quarterback position. Who is starting for us this week?
I spoke up Drake May a lot at the end of last season, saying to get him in dynasty leagues and stuff. And if you did, start him. Let's get spicy in week 1. I really believe in Drake May and his talent, and I think the situation around him is much improved from last year. Steph Diggs is going to be out there, it sounds like, week 1. They got Travion Henderson and other pieces there. And last season, the Raiders allowed the 3rd most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. I know it's a different defense and stuff, but this isn't a game where I expect the Patriots to be getting blown out. I think it'll be competitive. And one thing I expect a lot more out of Drake May this year than last year, him to run. So I think we see that on display on Sunday. And then I talked up Justin Fields until I'm blue in the face. I know he has a tough matchup on paper. I don't care. I am starting him in the leagues where I have him, which is a whole bunch, because I am expecting him to run at a very high rate, beginning in the revenge game against his old team. And look, clear the runway, proceed for takeoff. The Jets' tush push is about to hit us this season, and that rushing ability gives him such a safe floor and a high ceiling. I think you would struggle to find someone with higher than both than Justin Fields in week 1.
Yeah, if there was a brotherly shove opportunity for the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, they were not going to do that. So now, new-look Jets with Justin Fields. But who's going on our bench at quarterback this week?
Jared Goff. And I said in a lot of teams that I paired Goff and Fields together, and I'm playing Fields over him where I have him. And this isn't like all because it's outdoors and Goff is an indoor cat, as Rank likes to say, but it is specifically because the game is in Lambeau. And in 4 games as a Lion in Green Bay, Goff has averaged 206 passing yards per game, and in 4 total games, he has 4 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions. Plus, it is his first game with a new offensive coordinator, so there might be some growing pains there. And then last season, the Packers defense allowed the 6th fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, and they added some guy named Micah Parsons. So, yeah, that defense might be one you look to avoid in fantasy this season.
All right, that wraps up our quarterbacks. Time to go to the tight end position, which can be a little dicey. There's a whole lot of different ways to play it. Who are you starting this week?
The theme of week 1 is just getting the guys that I liked all summer into the article, and I backed no tight end more than Tyler Warren, and I have him in a bunch of leagues myself, and I'm just starting him with confidence this week. He is a huge target that is going to be used across the middle of the field, is a yak guy, and we know if Daniel Jones is one thing, he is safe. He does not like to air the ball out, so I expect a lot of short, quick passes across the middle like you just saw there that allows Tyler Warren to catch and run. I think he's going to be their top target this year, and that might come as soon as week 1 in a game where they're probably playing catch-up because Miami's offense can move the ball. And then David Njoku. I might not have loved him in drafts, but I love him in week 1 because he has huge games against the Cincinnati Bengals. Last season against the Bengals, his first game, 10 catches, 76 yards, and a touchdown. The second game, 8 catches for 66 yards. He had double-digit targets in each of those games. And if you're still not sold, you see right there, over 18 fantasy points per game with Joe Flacco as the starter the last 2 years. That's about around 10 or 11 with any other quarterback. So if you're ever going to play David Njoku, it should be in this game against this opponent with this quarterback when they're playing catch-up.
Yeah, tremendous Photoshop work to get this video of Joe Flacco throwing the ball to David Njoku. No, that was from a couple of years ago when it did happen, which is why Mike is referencing it there. But those guys are in. Which tight end that people feel great about are you benching this week?
Rank's not going to like me for this one, but I think he might actually agree. I'm going to sit Colston Loveland. I love the talent that Colston Loveland is, and I think he can become an every week starter. I'm anticipating writing about him as a starter many weeks in the future, but for week 1, I want to see it first, right? Like, DJ Moore is going to be their top target. Roma Dunze is going to get a bunch of volume. And then there's still Zacchaeus. There's Cole Kmet, who split snaps with Loveland during the preseason. There's Luther Burden if they start getting him involved. So I just want to see that the usage and the role is safe for Loveland, and then I think there'll be plenty of weeks to plug him in. But in week 1, you probably drafted him as your tight end too, so you have another option. I would probably go with that other option.
All right, taking a wait-and-see approach with Colston Loveland. If you want to see the rest of Michael F. Florio starts and sits, go to NFL.com/start-sit. But on this show, let's get back into the cabinet and get some more hot sauce of the sleeper variety with Adam Wright.
Oh, yeah, we're going to be going through the pantry looking for some sleeper hot sauce, something we could do. I thought I had a bunch of Del Scorcho packets here, but I threw them out the other day because at some point, once you finally throw away the Del Scorcho packets, that's when you need them the most. But I've got a quarterback for you, and I'm going to go with Bryce Young, who I'm calling a 3-alarm play in this one. Yeah, I really like this matchup for him going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team that has given up a lot of fantasy points to quarterbacks over the last year or so. Again, every year and every team is different. However, I really loved the way that Bryce Young finished last season. You know, they brought in a couple of guards to kind of strengthen them up the middle. It was a slow start. They brought in Andy Dalton, but once Bryce Young got back into the lineup, he is fantastic, at least 23 plus fantasy points in 3 of his final 6 games. All right, let's stay in Florida. All of these are in Florida. I didn't mean to do that. Cade Otton, a 3-alarm variety, going up against the Atlanta Falcons this week. Again, if you're looking for some tight end options, if you're somebody who slept on the position in the draft, which I might or might not have done, I think Cade Otton is still a very viable guy here. Even with Emeka Egbuka, his emergence, I still think you can't ignore the fact he had 9 end zone targets in 2024. That was tied for 4th amongst tight ends. Baker Mayfield loves him. You should too. And finally, El Diablo. El Diablo, let's get weird. Or let's get Brenton Strange going up against the Carolina Panthers. Listen, he had at least 10 fantasy points in games where he had at least 4+ targets. 7 receptions of 20+ yards in 2024. That was tied for the second most on the team. As we're sitting here and we're talking about Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Etienne, and Travis Hunter, you know what? It's going to be Brenton Strange that scores a touchdown. I'm going to be sitting there. I've already written the Doctor Strange, that helps no one bit for Monday because you know it's going to happen. You just know it. So Brenton Strange is going to be my El Diablo play. And there you have it, Patrick. Please, as I magnanimously allow you to do the bump.
Oh, thank you so much, Rank. When we come back, folks, it's kickoff eve, and it feels like Christmas came early. In fact, the first day of football should be a national holiday. We get into the holiday spirit for you next on NFL Fantasy Live.